When people think about the origins of economic thought, they jump to Adam Smith, Karl Marx, or maybe Aristotle. But there's a quieter truth the medieval world holds, one Western history rarely teaches. Nearly 1,000 years ago, long before capitalism or central banks existed, a Muslim scholar issued a warning that still echoes across every financial crisis today. When money loses its moral compass, societies rot from the inside out. And judging by the world we live in, he might have understood us better than we think. If you love the real stories behind money and power, hit like and subscribe before we go on. Now, let's dive in. To understand al-Ghazali, one of the great thinkers of the Islamic Golden Age, picture a world both familiar and foreign. The year is around 1100. Europe is fragmented and poor. Meanwhile, the Islamic world stretches from Spain to Persia. Its cities Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo are wealthy, crowded, sophisticated. Trade routes pulse, with caravans carrying silk, spices, and silver. Scholars debate philosophy, law, and medicine. The markets are busy, the empire is rich, and wealth is transforming society faster than anyone can understand. In this world of booming commerce and rising inequality, a scholar named Abu Hamid al-Ghazali emerges part philosopher, part jurist, part theologian, part critic. Born in 1058 in Persia, he rose quickly, and by his mid-30s, held one of the most prestigious teaching positions in the Islamic world. But what made him unique wasn't his prestige, it was his refusal to accept the status quo. He saw a society obsessed with money, but drifting from meaning. You don't have to try hard to see the modern parallel. Al-Ghazali began asking a question few had dared to. What happens when a civilization gets rich faster than it gets wise? To answer it, he turned to money itself. And this surprises most people. He wasn't just a religious thinker, he was one of the earliest philosophers to analyze money in moral and systemic terms. Where Aristotle saw money as a practical invention, al-Ghazali examined its psychological and spiritual impact on a society. For al-Ghazali, money was never meant to be worshipped, hoarded, or used as a status symbol. It was a tool, a facilitator of exchange. He compared it to a mirror. A mirror has no value on its own. Its worth comes from what it reflects. Money is the same. Its power lies not in the gold or silver, but in what it allows people to trade, build, and cooperate. Modern economists claim that idea as their own. But al-Ghazali was writing it in the 11th century, when many Europeans still understood wealth mainly as land or loot. And from this came one of his most important insights. Hoarded money is dead money. Wealth locked away in chests or buried in courtyards wasn't just useless, it was socially destructive. Idle wealth doesn't circulate. It doesn't feed workers, fund trade, or support families. It strangles economic life. He called it freezing the bloodstream of society, a line that could appear in any modern critique of inequality. But this wasn't simply a complaint about greed. His argument was systemic. When the wealthy hoard money, they create scarcity, not because resources are lacking, but because circulation is blocked. Prices distort, markets break down, people suffer. And this leads to his next idea. Speculation destroys trust. He had no patience for merchants who manipulated prices, created artificial shortages, or exploited crises. He saw speculation not as clever strategy, but as moral corruption, profit without contribution. Whoever profits from the suffering of others, he wrote, profits from corruption. And corruption, in his view, was a contagion once it takes hold. It spreads through markets, institutions, and eventually the whole society. If this sounds like a commentary on modern financial bubbles, predatory lending, or crisis profiteering, it is. Just written 900 years earlier. But al-Ghazali wasn't anti-profit or anti-business. He believed in trade strongly, believed markets were natural and necessary, and that wealth could be noble. His real target was dishonest trade, cheating, lying, false weights, concealing defects, manipulating information. Markets function only when participants trust one another, and once trust collapses, the economy collapses right behind it. In that sense, he was one of the earliest thinkers to describe what economists now call information asymmetry and moral hazard, just without the jargon. But al-Ghazali didn't stop with individuals. He also delivered one of the earliest critiques of state currency manipulation. Medieval rulers, like many modern ones, diluted gold or silver coins to stretch their budgets, taxing people through stealth inflation. He condemned this outright, Debasing currency was theft. It eroded trust, punished the poor who got the weaker coins, and destabilized the system from the top down. He believed the state had a role in maintaining fair markets, but a limited one. Leaders should protect the economy, not manipulate it for short-term gain. He warned that unjust rulers destroy prosperity faster than any outside enemy, and these warnings came not from theory, but from watching real states. When rulers felt their grip slipping, the first place they tightened their hands was the economy. Some raised taxes to painful levels, others manipulated coinage, seized merchant assets, or borrowed recklessly and left future generations to pay. None of it solved the underlying problem. Al-Ghazali believed corruption at the top radiated downward like poison. When a ruler cheated his people, merchants felt justified in cheating their customers, and individuals saw no reason to act with responsibility. The entire order, from the palace treasury to the neighborhood market, became a chain reaction of distrust. His conclusion was stark but simple. A society can survive poverty, but it cannot survive corruption. Economic collapse is rarely about running out of money or resources. It's about the breakdown of trust, the invisible glue that holds every transaction, contract, and currency together. When that trust erodes, even the wealthiest nation becomes fragile. To al-Ghazali, currency stability depended entirely on honesty. A ruler who tampered with currency wasn't being clever. He was stealing from his own people in slow motion. He predicted that if states manipulated currency too often, people would lose trust, abandon the local coin, and start using stronger foreign currencies instead. 1,000 years later, these exact dynamics played out in Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and Argentina. Every case where people flee their own money because they no longer trust the promises behind it. Because al-Ghazali understood human nature, people hoard out of fear, speculate out of greed, and cheat when they think they can get away with it. When exploitation becomes normal, collapse is already underway. His insight was that you cannot fix an economy without fixing the incentives that shape behavior. That's why he stressed the moral dimension of wealth. Wealth isn't bad, but it's incomplete without purpose. A society grows strong when people contribute more than they extract, and a selfish one eventually collapses under its own weight, everyone paying, including the wealthy who thought they were immune. And that brings us into the modern world, where al-Ghazali's insights feel less like medieval philosophy and more like a diagnostic report of our age. We live in a global economy where money moves faster than meaning. Inequality approaches levels not seen in centuries, and financial bubbles grow, burst, and grow again with predictable regularity. His critique of hoarding mirrors today's debates about billionaires and offshore accounts. His warnings about speculation resemble concerns over housing crises, crypto volatility, and shadow banking. His condemnation of manipulated currency strikes at the heart of modern monetary policy. What strikes you is how little has changed. The technology is different, the market's faster, the scale global, but the human behaviors are the same. Al-Ghazali wasn't preaching religion, he was describing reality. He understood what economists often struggle to admit. Money is not a mechanical object, it's a moral ecosystem, and when the moral framework disintegrates, the financial system follows. Economies don't collapse because the numbers stop adding up. They collapse because the people inside stop trusting each other. That's why his ideas still matter. In an era of record debt, speculative excess, and institutional mistrust, his message becomes a survival principle. If money becomes detached from morality, the system will eventually break. As he put it, 1,000 years ago, where justice is lost, prosperity cannot remain. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this gave you a new perspective on how money and power really work, hit like and subscribe, because history always has the answers. You just have to know where to look.